And good afternoon and welcome to the School Education Gateways thematic webinar session on arts and creativity. And today we have two speakers presenting. First, we have Joan Parr from Creative Scotland, and then we have Iohana Unrescu from Asociatia Edulifelong. So the first speaker, Joan, very welcome to this session and thank you for joining us. And you can start your presentation now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody.
There's a bit of an
Um,
echo in your sound.
yes, there is.
If we can just have it another speaker off and we can just have your microphone, it would be much better.
Just give us one moment, please.
Okay, sure, not a problem. And while the problem gets checked, if you have any questions for Joan about her presentation, you can type the questions into the chat box and then we can have a look at them after the presentation. Joan, are you still with us?
Yeah, how is that? Is that better?
Yeah, now it's better. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to be speaking to you. My name is Joan Parr. I work at Creative Scotland, and if you look at the first slide there, you'll see two logos. You'll see the Creative Scotland one on the right. That's my day job. My title is Head of Creative Learning and Young People, and the logo on the left is AceNet. Now, that's a European network of policymakers, civil servants from education and culture ministries from around Europe. And I'll just mention a little bit more about that later on in my presentation. But just to get us started, um, one second, here we go. So this is what I am going to speak to you about very, very quickly. These are big subjects and I have 20 minutes. So I just want to give you a bit of an introduction to what is creative learning, why is it important, and what does it look like? And mostly in a bit of a Scottish context, because we have been working on this subject, what is creative learning and why is it important, for quite a number of years now. And I know it's a subject that a lot of other countries are increasingly interested in. So, like all good stories, we start with once upon a time. Now, once upon a time, say going back 200 years ago, the purpose of education was, certainly in Scotland, was to enable everybody to read the Bible. It was about the same time as the Reformation, and that was why they wanted people to be able to read so they could have a direct relationship with God. And that was why people were taught to read, and that's why everybody was taught to read. Um, Now, of course, that is massively out of date. The world has changed radically since then. If we look at this picture, you'll see that this must be a very common scenario, I think, to everybody around the world in terms of what school can look like, what it does look like, but really, it really shouldn't look like this. People are unmotivated, they're not interested, they may if they're lucky, stick in and learn enough to pass the exams that they're set, but it's not the way that we want our young people to be spending 12 years of their lives. Um, and it's not the way we want them to be thinking about learning. It's not encouraging them to be curious or to have an interest and a motivation to learn throughout their lives. So, back to the once upon a time. In 2002, in Scotland, we had a national debate. What is the purpose of education? If it's not about reading the Bible anymore, if it's not about the Industrial Revolution and producing 20% managers and 80% manual workers, what is it for? Why do we send our young people um, 5 days a week for 12 years to an institution called school? Why do we make them sit exams? Why do we spend vast amounts of public money on education? Why do we do it? It's time to rethink it. So we had this national debate in Scotland, And we came up with the fact that there was a high level of confidence in the system in Scotland. Rightly or wrongly, we had a good reputation for our education system, but still it was felt to be outmoded now. The curriculum had to become more ambitious. Young people need to acquire more complex and sophisticated skills and ways of thinking to be appropriate in the modern world. And the most important shift, probably, in the thinking around the curriculum was that we needed to shift from a system that was based on the transfer of knowledge, so a teacher transferring knowledge and information to their students, to a system where knowledge and skills are seen as equally important. So that introducing the skills and attributes was a new thing for an education system. So what we're really talking about here is moving to a competency system. And a competency is a mixture of skills, knowledge, and attitudes. And that I know more and more countries, certainly around Europe, are adopting a competency-based approach. So if we think, what are the drivers for change then? What is this? Okay, so the world's changing, it's very different now. So what are exactly these drivers for change? So one of the places that's operating largely as it did about 50 years ago, and probably long before that, is the local school. If you were a time traveller travelling from the past to now, 2018, you would notice that the ways that people communicate are entirely different, the way we transport ourselves are entirely different, the way we spend our leisure time, the way we eat, we watch television, we go to the cinema, we play computer games, all these things would have been entirely unknown 50, 100 years ago. But if you went into a school, it would look pretty familiar. There would probably still be a teacher standing in front of a class, in front of a board, writing things on a board, and there would be rows of desks with young people, probably looking quite bored and doing what they were told. So the other thing is that by the age of 16, the average adult in the UK will have done 75% of the writing they're ever going to do in their lives. We just don't write. I don't know about anybody else, but I know for myself, my handwriting is now very, very bad because I never ever use it. Everything's done by typing. And the other statistic, which is a bit difficult to actually prove, but we can understand the idea that 80% of the jobs that current primary ones, so that's 5, 6-year-old young people, will do in their lives when they're adults don't yet exist. And we know that now, if we look at the jobs market, certainly in Western Europe, it's entirely unrecognizable from it would have been 50 years ago. There are all kinds of jobs and professions around now that hadn't been imagined 50 years ago. And not just that, but the chances are that that rate of change will keep increasing so that whatever job you do get when you're 17, 18, you're likely to get 5 or 6 or 7 jobs throughout your career. You're going to have to be constantly learning, changing, being flexible, and you're going to need the attributes that will allow you to do that. So there was also research drivers. Now, this one in particular is one of my favorites by James Catterall, based in the USA. This is a study he did in 2009, and it was a huge study. So he studied 12,000 students for 12 years. So that was an amazingly robust study of the difference between students that undertook an arts-rich education and students who didn't have any arts or much arts in their education. So what he found, and this is of course just very, very few statistics taken out of this enormous study, things like they're 17% more likely to enroll in college or higher education if they've had an arts-rich education. They're more likely to volunteer. They're more likely to have strong friendships. So these are social attributes as well. These are not just academic attributes, but they're going to be better adjusted socially. Really interesting, they're going to be 20% more likely to vote. So they're going to be more civically aware, they're going to be more politically engaged, which has got to be a good thing too. He went on, James Catterall, to do another 6 years, I think, on top of this. So there's a lot of really robust evidence there about the value of arts education. Now, the other thing I should mention here is this is about arts education. And one of the things that I'm coming on to talk about is creativity, because I want to make the distinction between the words arts and the words creativity. They're different things. They do have a crossover, they are associated, but there is a bit of a myth that we need to get rid of, that arts and creativity are the same thing. They're not the same thing. Um, but the arts are very important, and they're one mechanism by which we encourage creativity. If you're interested in more research evidence, by the way, about the arts or about creativity, I have a slide of resources at the end of this presentation. And one of the places I would recommend you look is an organization called the Cultural Learning Alliance. Just Google Cultural Learning Alliance and you'll see they have various briefing papers. What they've done is drawn together some of the research, some of the highlights from the research that's been done across the world. So I would highly recommend them as a source of research. So there are also economic drivers. Now this is new for us in terms of the arts. When we talked about the arts, it was very difficult for us to make an economic argument for the arts. But I think now that we're talking about the arts and creativity, that becomes much, much easier. I mean, for example, creative industries are responsible for 2.8 billion in our economy in Scotland. I've written also on this slide about blurring the commercial and the cultural, because I think this is important too. This word blurring or breaking down of distinctions, breaking down of silos between subject areas that we had previously. That's one of the things that creativity does. It blurs those things. Things don't fit into neat boxes. For example, if you take the example of music, is music an art form or is it an industry? Now, certainly in the UK, it's both. It's a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, it is a high art form. At the other end of the spectrum, it's an industry that makes a lot of money. And that kind of blurring, that kind of mixing up is increasingly common. And similarly with subjects in schools. I mean, when you go to the shops, for example, when you go shopping, are you just using maths or are you using maths, literacy, and a whole lot of other attributes as well? Life isn't in neat silos like that. It is something more holistic, and so is learning. So this is another slide that shows you the importance of the economic arguments for arts and creativity. This slide is from the World Economic Forum that happens every year in Davos. And every 5 years, I think they predict what they think the top 10 skills that are going to be wanted by employers are. So in 2010, they predicted that in 2015, that list on the right was going to be the top 10 skills that employers were going to be looking for. And if you see number 10 at the bottom of that list was creativity. Then they do that exercise again and predict what are going to be the top 10 skills in 2020. And if you see, creativity has moved up the list to number 3. So they're saying that creativity skills are going to be the third most wanted skill set by employers in 2020. But if you look at number 1 and 2 on that list, complex problem solving and critical thinking, I would argue that they are subsets of creativity. Which brings us to another interesting thing, is that when people talk about creativity, do we really have an agreed definition of what we're talking about? And I'll come back to that in a second. So after all this national debate, this is what we came up with in Scotland as the purpose of education. So we decided that the purpose of education was to enable all young people to become, that's the bit in the middle, to enable all young people to become 4 things, 4 competencies, if you like. And they are confident individuals, effective contributors, responsible citizens, and successful learners. So that was what Scotland agreed what was the purpose of education. And you can see immediately how well the arts and creativity can feature in a curriculum designed to deliver those 4 competencies. Then the curriculum goes on to, so why teach the arts in schools? What's special about the arts? So if we want those 4 things, what's the place of the arts? And this is what we came up with. And you'll see highlighted in red, one of them is express themselves in different ways and be creative. The next red one is interesting, experience enjoyment, because that is quite new in education policy language, the fact that it's good and important that learners enjoy themselves. If they're enjoying themselves, they are more likely to learn and more likely to have an appetite and be curious. Then there's transferable skills, again to do with that blurring. Art is not in a silo, creativity is not in a silo, neither is any other subject. There are transferable skills. There is knowledge specific to subject areas, but the skills tend to be transferable. The next one is very interesting. Experience the inspiration and power of the arts. Now, the reason I find that one so interesting is we don't yet know how to measure that. How do you measure the inspiration and power of the arts? And for me, it was so important that this was included in our curriculum documents because it meant that for more or less the first time, the education system was open to having something in their curriculum that you couldn't measure. So for many good reasons, education is very accountable, but this was also acknowledging that there are some things that are important, even though we don't yet know how to robustly measure them. Nevertheless, we believe they are very, very important for the education of a young person and for their lives. In Scotland, the expressive arts that are taught in schools are made up of 4 subject areas: dance, visual arts, music, and drama. So what do we mean by creativity? Now, that first quote at the top there is from Sir Ken Robinson, and it's a very nice, succinct way of talking about creativity. Creativity is imagination is the capacity for original thought, and creativity is applied imagination. I think that's brilliantly succinct. However, in the blue box is what was agreed by the Scottish education system. Similarly, the capacity to generate ideas, things that have value to the individual, looking at things with a fresh eye, examining problems with an open mind, making connections, learning from mistakes, and using your imagination. So in 2013, that definition was signed off by our education minister, our culture minister, and all the national education agencies in Scotland. We published this book, which you can download for free from the Creative Scotland website, and it goes into more detail. It has our vision, our mission, some case studies of what that means, and all the education agencies that signed up. So that's worth a look from the Creative Scotland website. I wanted to mention this as well. You education people out there listening will probably be very familiar with this, Bloom's taxonomy. It's a hierarchy of higher order thinking skills. So at the bottom is remembering, then you move to understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating is at the top. So creating is the highest of the higher order thinking skills. However, one of the problems that we've still got and that we've still got to solve is if we all believe that creating is the highest of the higher order thinking skills and we think higher order thinking skills are important, why are our exam systems still based on the bottom of that hierarchy? Why are we still looking at remembering and understanding as being the highest of our ambitions for an exam system? We still have to work on that. So once we defined what creativity was, then we had to think about, okay, so that's a very generic definition. What are actually the skills involved there? What are the skills that teachers should be delivering? And this is what we came up with. Able to harness imagination, constructively inquisitive, open-minded, able to identify and solve problems, and my very favorite one, confident in your right and ability to influence change. because you can see how the arts have a role in this, but it goes much, much broader than just the arts. Confident in your right and ability to influence change goes right to the heart of politics, really, and civic engagement. Those skills are embedded in this document, How Good is Our School, which is the document that our school inspectors use. It's based on a self-evaluation process. So the schools self-evaluate themselves against the criteria within that document, and then the school inspectors come and double check, if you like. But those creativity skills are in that document, which was a massive leap forward for us and for the importance of creativity in school education. And this is what is written within that document, and you'll see the link to those skills, so that the children should be motivated to challenge assumptions. Again, radically new for an education system. Can you imagine that being in any kind of education documents 100 years ago, that children would be encouraged to challenge the status quo and come up with different ideas? No, they were supposed to sit there and consume what they were told and regurgitate it when they were told. They're now supposed to take ownership of their own learning and teaching. They're supposed to be imaginative, confident risk takers. Again, that's very, very new and quite radical. And they're supposed to ask questions, make connections, envisage what might be possible, explore ideas, and seek and justify solutions. And these are the characteristics of creative learning. And they're very similar, if not identical, actually, to good learning anyway. So if you are combining physical, social, emotional, and intellectual engagement, that's a kind of pinnacle of creative learning, but it's also, I would suggest, good learning. PISA, I'm sure you're all familiar with, are looking at including creativity thinking in their 2021 tests, which is another driver for us all to take this more seriously. In terms of what it looks like, if you look at that boy in the middle, he is clearly emotionally, socially, physically engaged and having a great time. I love this little picture too of the girl dancing, and she's at school, clearly having a fabulous time. Now, I've got a very short piece of film here that perhaps you are in control of there, and perhaps you can show us just a bit. There are many more films that I've given in the resource section, but if this works, you can just get a quick clip on what it looks like in a classroom. No, is it not working?
I think one of the most surprising things is the children's change in attitude. They weren't really quite sure what creativity was. They kind of thought, oh, that's like drawing, and we do that sometimes, it's art. But sometimes, especially one of the first ones we did was poetry. A lot of the children were very much like, oh, I don't really like poetry, but by the end of the week, their attitude completely changed. So I really like poetry.
There's been one or two children that have been surprised at how they've reacted to the project and the artists, and show a lot more character and enthusiasm than I'd ever known them to have before.
You got to start your story?
What has surprised me today, and probably the project as a whole, is probably about the engagement of different children who maybe experience particular challenge in literacy or different aspects of the curriculum. I've seen that they've become a lot more participative, much more open to offering answers and ideas. They don't seem to feel inhibited, or that that they've got less to offer.
The teachers and the students can speak.
Okay, and are they like in front of the camera or are they behind the camera?
Sometimes we've done some maybe straightforward art practice, some straightforward drawing and painting, maybe some quite quiet works. When I ask them what their favourite thing that they've done is, they quite often say these very, very quiet, reflective things. You wouldn't assume that young children in primary 4 or primary 5 would still enjoy that kind of thing in such a sort of interactive world. So that has surprised me.
I think maybe we can stop it there. We can stop it there because I've given you links in the resource page to that film and other films, so you can watch them at your leisure. Just very finally, before we got to the resource page, if we go back one, I just wanted to again reiterate to you about AceNet, because that's the other logo that's been on these slides, and it is a European-wide network of policymakers from the education and cultural divisions of government. So if you go on the AceNet website, you'll find who is representing your country in AceNet, and you can get in touch with them if you have if you want to get in touch with them or find out any more. So that is me, and that is the resource page. And there are many more resources, but that will hopefully give you a start. But very open to answering any questions that anybody has. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you, John, very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. I'm sure the participants will have some questions. We have time for a couple questions before the next presentation. So if you have any of them, you can type them in the chat box. So we have the first question here from Maria. What about creativity in high school?
Yeah, that is much more difficult, of course. Because, well, I can't speak for other countries, but I imagine certainly in Europe it's quite similar, that primary school, so in Scotland that means up to the age of sort of 12, you are in a classroom, generally speaking, with one teacher, so the teacher has much more flexibility to plan in a cross-curricular way. Whereas once you get to high school, it's things like changing classroom every 50 minutes, changing from one teacher to another teacher. And that's one of the issues that I mentioned about blurring and the cross-curricular nature. You know, it's so much more difficult to do that if you are still supposed to be moving classroom, moving teacher every 50 minutes, every hour. That said, in Scotland, I think there has been quite a bit of progress on that. There are some high schools that are doing extremely well. And of course, one of the outcomes of working in a more creative way is that it is actually much more interesting for the teachers. So the teachers get to work, say the geography teacher, for example, gets to work with the art teacher, and they go out and they're doing field work around minerals and how that is applied to artwork, how it applies in geography, how that then applies to oil industry, how it applies to technology and future jobs. You know, so there's lots and lots of collaborations across the teaching profession and across subject areas that are making life more interesting for the pupils and the teachers. But it's a very slow moving process, changing to that way of working from the traditional way of moving classroom and moving subject area every hour. So I'd love to hear of any other examples from other countries, but we do have some good examples in Scotland, but you're right in suggesting it's much more difficult in secondary school than it is in primary school. And the other problem, of course, with high school is that it's fine, or it's relatively easy to do the creative cross-curricular work until the young people are about 14, 15. Then they hit studying for exams, and of course the teachers then are teaching, for quite understandable reasons, to get the children through their exams, because that's how success, sadly, is still measured, which is one of the points I was making about Bloom's taxonomy, that the exam system, how we give credit to the attributes we want our young people to have, has to change.
Can you hear me? Okay, seems like I have a bit of problem with my microphone. Thank you for your answer. And then one more question from Barbara. How is creativity practically promoted in schools?
Well, if it has quite a high profile in our curriculum documents. So our curriculum, by the way, is called Curriculum for Excellence. So if you wanted to look at the curriculum documents, I would just Google Curriculum for Excellence, and you'll see all those principles, and you'll see a lot of description of what they mean by creativity, why they think it's important. They are very good documents. So all the teachers, of course, have to read those documents. They have to plan in accordance with those documents. And then the most recent one that I also had a slide on, the How Good is Our School, that's the inspection document. And that is incredibly important for teachers because obviously that's how they are judged. So having the definition of creativity skills in there is massively valuable. And I think that's probably, if there was one single document I would mention, it's probably that one, is because the teachers, of course, are interested in how they're going to be assessed.
The participants in the chat box are already getting very inspired by your presentation and starting e-twinning projects on these arts. So that's a very good to see so much activity going on. And I think we can now move on to the next presentation unless there are any other urgent questions. So thank you so much, Joan, for your presentation. And Iohana, are you ready for your presentation now?
Hi, I guess so.
Yes, okay, hi. I'm just gonna...
Hello, everyone. My name is Iohana Unrescu. Well, I'll have to wait for a bit for my presentation to pop up.
Just going to do it.
Well, after seeing the good work Joan did, I hope I will manage to do it myself, although I'm not that experienced in webinars. And I've seen lots of questions about practical examples. So I hope that the practice example that I will show in the next slides will maybe draw some light.
Hello, yes, just a moment. I don't know what happened. Your slides had disappeared there for a moment, but we will have them on the screen. Yes, just in a minute. Thank you, Anna, also for coming and for presenting. We will have the slides.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. And if the participants have any other questions for Joan, you can just also type them in the chat box and I'll pick them up and we can ask them towards the end of the seminar. And if any other questions, just type them in the chat box and we'll answer them there. And thank you for your patience when I put the slides there. Should be just a moment.
Okay.
They should be.
Yeah. Okay. So today I will present a project, an Erasmus project, as you may all see, that has made me and everyone else involved very proud because at the end it was selected as a good practice example. So I hope it will be inspiring for you. As I said, the project was called Career in Art. And today I'm going to speak not only on behalf of my school, but also on behalf of 6 other schools, because we were 6 together. 4 schools were only art schools, and the other 2 were vocational schools. And we have been working together for over 3 years. The countries involved were Romania, Poland, Belgium, Slovenia, and Slovakia, and Turkey. And well, we've got the idea to run this project after this recurring question. When an artist is asked, "What do you do?" and he says, "I'm an artist," everybody is doing a face like, "No, I mean for a living," because everybody's thinking like this is just a hobby and you can't make a living out of it. And well, sadly, this myth of the starving artist has quite deep roots into today's society. And it's very powerful, I would say, because we've seen many parents a long time that are advising their children not to go to art schools, but to choose something completely different. Although they may be very talented, but they would say go to I don't know, a programming school or medicine or engineering, because these are jobs that are very well paid, and people put money before happiness, maybe when they have to choose for careers. Well, and speaking about this bad myth, we've also seen art students sometimes that are afraid to face challenges, and they don't have the courage to continue their studies in the field of art, and they would rather go to study something completely opposite, like law or economics. So with this project, we've tried to show our students that it's possible to make a career out of art, and that there are many artists nowadays that are making a good living out of it, and it's just a matter of know-how. So anyway, our final objective in the end was to increase the number of students that would attend or continue their studies in the field of art, and eventually make a living out of it, so find a job in this field. Anyway, in order to achieve this task, we have engaged our students in many workshops focusing on creativity, communication, ICT, linguistic skills, and of course entrepreneurship, because that's the key. Yeah. Well, I'll go through some slides to just show you some examples that maybe will give you a better idea of how we did in our project and what approaches we have used. And well, first of all, you must all know that art students, they do best in a creative environment, and in order to enhance their creativity, we have prepared a large palette of artistic workshops where they have learned many new art techniques. And I'll go through some slides. Well, and this one, for instance, you see an art technique that it's not new, because actually it's very old, but it was very new for the students, because well, it's craftsman here in this photo that's showing our students in their their atelier how to paint traditional pictures and a plate and ceramic, and it was done in Horezu. It's a small city full of craftsmen that are really happy to share their knowledge with the youth. And well, students have practiced, and the results were remarkable. In this other picture, you can see that we have tried, well, we the Romanians, I mean, we have tried to show our guests how to do handmade embroidery and a piece of and in the end they have managed to do this embroidery in a traditional Romanian blouse. Again, the results were really beautiful. This workshop, for instance, it was very close to my heart. It was a combination of poetry and art, and students got these cubes made out of clay. The clay was still wet, so that it can be modulated, and they had to write a poem on some of the sides of the cube, and on the other side they had to try to put an image, to create an image of something that was representative for the poem according to them. Again, beautiful results. Well, we've done many workshops, from sculpting to to wax here, yeah, painting in wax, and again modeling in clay. Here our students have learned how to do traditional wooden cutlery. Again, all the workshops were really interesting, and well, our aim in the end was to enhance their willingness to learn new techniques and to try something new every time, because you'll never know what can inspire you later in your work being an artist, I mean. So through the workshops that we've done, all the students were inspired either by local craftsmen, by costumes, by patterns, by materials, and we will say that as a result, they have expanded their knowledge about fine arts. They have developed new artistic skills, and of course, all these have in the end boosted their motivation. And this wasn't the only approach, of course. The second approach we have used in our project was to organize visits. And I might say that we've had many study visits. Because we've been in many places in order to try to impress them and to motivate them. And we've been to galleries, to museums, to art centers, to castles, UNESCO heritage sites, and many more. They've been in buildings that have inspired them because of their architecture, to craftsmen like in this slide, and visited the atelier and learned everything about the process of making ceramic plates and other. In churches painted with beautiful old icons, art museums, of course, and also modern galleries like Iohana in this picture. And well, in this slide you will see that we've tried to go further with our visits and not just make them like you can see this and that and maybe have some explanation from a guide. We have been with our students to art studios of acclaimed local artists who are proud to show them their work, and also have explained to them how they started their artistic careers. They pointed out some entrepreneurial skills that one needs in order to run a business in art. And well, above all, they show them that, yeah, it's possible. It's possible to make a living out of art. So in this picture, maybe we have some participants from Slovakia that are recognizing that this is the art studio of the painter Klara Smidova. She's a Slovakian artist, as I said, and she was really happy to share her work and her experience with our students. And well, our students have had so many ideas after seeing the beautiful books that she has illustrated along her life. And they were impressed to see that she started from low with doing some calendars. That was something that she was not so happy about or not so proud, but it was the fact that boosted her career. So she was proud to share all this with our students. Okay, I'll go on. The last approach, and this one I might say I think it was the most difficult concept. It's the concept of business in art. And because it was so hard, we didn't just jump into it. We've done it gradually. In the first year, we've asked our students to get involved in two tenders. One of them was a tender about choosing the best logo of the project. And well, I hope you liked our logo. The other were really beautiful as well. And our students were really, really proud of doing everything from scratch. And it was maybe difficult for some of them to try to embed everything they know in just a name or just an image. But they've done a good job. The second tender that they had to do was about making an interview with famous artists. And again, the results were really nice. We have 6 videos, and I would like to invite you at the end of this webinar to try to go to our website and try to watch these videos, because there are 6 of them, all 6 very beautiful and very different, of course, with famous artists from the partner countries. And well, I'll share with you another thing. Our Slovakian partners have enrolled their video into a national contest, and they were among the winners. So that's just to give you a tip that the videos are really good. Okay, later along the project, we continue with this business in art topic by organizing some workshops about it, to continue doing logos, to continue to do visits to studio, discussions with artists, with people involved in art, putting up exhibition at the end of activities or students' meetings and so on. And well, in the 3rd year, we have organized a seminar. It was actually done in Ljubljana, in Slovenia, during one of the students' exchange that we've had. It was, of course, a seminar where the speaker was an artist, an expert, in the field of artistic business. And well, it was very fruitful, I would say, because students have learned that the future may lay in cooperatives, sustainable joint business, where more artists are splitting the costs and run shops together, and in the end they all benefit. Because yeah, it is hard to start alone. Another focal point in our project was to teach them about ICT skills and to help them develop the skills. And you may see in this slide that we have implemented, many workshops related to acquiring ICT skills. And I'm not going to talk about all of them because it would take too much time and I don't have it. But I will tell you about e-portfolios, because this workshop, we believe, was the most important, because it has helped our students to learn how to make their art digital and how to put it up together on a website that will become their portfolio. And they have also learned how to present themselves and their work as artists. And we are strongly positive about the fact that these portfolios will help them enter art schools in the future or find a good job. I'll keep going. Another important thing was languages. We are aware that speaking English is nowadays a must, and especially in the field of arts. If you don't speak English, then it's quite hard to get a job. And we focused both on speaking skills and writing skills, because both of them are important, of course. And for instance, we've used Europass platform as a tool that facilitated our students to write their CVs, their cover letters, their languages passports, and so on. And for the speaking skills, the best approach to do it was to force them to speak English as much as possible. And that was done because they were placed in families during the student exchanges, thus forced to speak all the time in English. And also they had to work in groups during workshops, and this wasn't the only benefit of just developing the English skills. The other benefit was that during these student exchanges, they got the opportunity to foster European values like solidarity, like learning about democracy, brotherhood across nations, and so on. And we've had many workshops that were specially designed for that, because students had to learn about the differences across nations through various activities, and they learned that differences are not bad. So most of the times are not not bad. Just people are just different, and it's not in a bad way. And in the picture from this slide, this is taken after a workshop that was done in a way to pay our respects to the people who have died in the Second World War. We were near a cemetery in Belgium where many tombs of those who have died are there, and together with our students, we've had created some amulets out of painted glass, and we have place them in the trees so that when the wind blows, they will make a beautiful sound. After that, we held our hands in a circle and we paid our respects. Okay, it was a very nice activity. Okay, we've had other activities that were great. But it's really not time to speak about all of them. So I'll go to dissemination. This is the hard part of doing a project. You have to make sure that it's reaching the right people, that you get the proper attention when you make the dissemination, and you reach the wider public, and you also reach important decision makers. And well, we believe that we've done a good job, because as you may see, we have reached people through various channels, and we were on TV, we were in newspapers, we were in galleries. We tried to make sure that everybody knows about our project, and about the importance of people with natural talent to pursue their talent and have a career in art. For instance, here in this picture, we've had our dissemination activity in a park, and we've had an artistic workshop that included drawing on the street together with very small kids. You may think it's a very strange activity, but it wasn't actually, because our purpose was to raise awareness about the importance of arts, and involving kids and having their parents watch was important to show them that art is part of our lives. It's beautiful and rewarding, and parents should allow their children to continue and to do what they're good at. Okay, as I said, we've been quite successful with the dissemination part, because, for instance, in this photo you can see the final exhibition that was done after the student exchange in Slovenia. And here some ambassadors were invited, and we were pleased to see that the Slovak and Polish ambassador have accepted the invitation, and they took part in this final conference. And Also, our project was selected to participate in a conference in Bonn. There, my Slovenian colleague Sandra presented the project. Okay, and I think everybody knows this guy, yeah? Okay, so our Belgium partners were really, really lucky to have these great guests in their school. And the first president of the European Council, Mr. Van Rompuy, he visited, as I said, our partners in Belgium, and he was the one who offered the prize to the student that has designed the logo of the project, the one that was selected as the best. And, after that, he also had a speech, and he stressed about the importance of Erasmus projects and international projects in order to have a stronger and more united European Union. So, well, as a conclusion, I would like to say that our students and us teachers, and I'm saying that in behalf of my colleagues as well, we have all learned a lot from this project. We got new skills, we got more adaptable, we learned to cooperate more, and everybody got inspired from their peers from the other countries, and we've managed to bring an international dimension to our curriculum and to our schools. So it was everybody's benefit, I would say. Well, with this, I will end my presentation, and I do hope that I have managed to inspire some of you, and maybe you will use some of our project ideas into your own. Yeah, the link is on this slide. So feel free to check our website. You will find there more photos, more workshops that we have done. Also, you have access to the resources that we have created, like multilinguistic dictionary of art terms. We have brochures. We have a guide on how to put up exhibitions and so on. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for your attention, and if you have further questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
For your presentation, does anyone have any questions to either Iohana or to Joan, any of the speakers? Meanwhile, I read a comment from Hannah, a question from Hannah, and a comment from Maria about how art teachers should be at all levels of education. And then Hannah had this question: should all teachers also have some basic understanding of arts and learning, or should the responsibility stay with specialist teachers? So this is questions for both Iohana and Joan, if you have any thoughts on this topic.
Well, I can say one thing. Well, first of all, I'm not an art teacher. I'm a mathematics teacher, actually. But as I said, art is important. It's an important thing in our lives. And in our project team, we've involved many teachers, not only the art teachers, because as some of you have written in your comments, it's only 1 hour to teach art. So we only have one art teacher in our school. However, we've had textile engineers involved, because can you teach design without being good at art? I think not. And we've had English teachers involved also. And I really believe in this cross-curriculum teaching. We don't really apply it in our country, but once in a while we have the opportunity to do some activities that are cross. And well, doing projects like an twinning or larger projects that are funded with European money, like Erasmus, it's a great way of combining this, as you, I don't know, get the opportunity to learn from your colleagues about how to apply this, how to make cross-curricular activities, and how to embed art and mathematics and science and so on. So I think it's possible to combine them easily, and I'm really convinced that all teachers should try to approach art, because 1 hour per week it's
Joan, do you have any thoughts on this topic?
Yes. Can you hear me again now? Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I think it is. Oh, I'm getting feedback again. Are you getting feedback? You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just carry on. I think it is important that all the arts feature in teacher education. I don't think we can expect all teachers to be experts in art, but they need to understand the value of it in education. And there are other ways that they can ensure that their students do get expert input from professional artists of a good quality. So I think there are different ways of getting quality arts into schools, but I think teachers need to have an understanding of why it's important. And I do think that all teachers all teachers can develop and encourage those creativity skills that I mentioned. So they can do that. They can take that responsibility on, but we can't expect all teachers to be expert artists. But if they understand the value of arts and creativity, then they can source that expertise into their lessons.
Can you hear me? I think, yeah. Any other questions for the presenters? Meanwhile, I'm just going to share some other links from School Education Gateway. Meanwhile, because we're running a bit out of overtime here, so I would like to say a big thank you for all the presenters and all the participants that have joined so far. So are there any other final questions for either of the presenters? I have put a couple of links here for you for your consideration, so you can have a look at the feedback survey for this webinar. And also, if you click on the links, you can find more information about the thematic webinars on School Education Gateway and the upcoming webinars as well. The next one for thematic webinars will be about languages, and that will be sometime in September around the European Day of Languages, which is on the 26th of September, so around that time. And also we have the next entrepreneurial education webinar next week. So any other questions for the presenters? I would like to thank them very much for your very inspiring presentation. I saw a lot of comments and discussions going on in the chat box. And unfortunately, there are no certificates for this webinar, but I hope that you will join us for the next time. And many thanks for all the presentations and for attending the seminar. We will share the recording and the presentations afterwards on the event page. So you can, if you go back there, you will find all the materials and the links as well.